Hi, I'm Ashley and welcome to my channel. I'm super excited for today's video because I'm going to be reading 3 recent 2023 fantasy releases, and those books are The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten, which came out in March, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, which came out in May, and Under Skies by H.E. Baum. And this one came out in April. So I'm going to start with The Foxglove King, and I'm super excited for this one because I read Hannah Whitten's For the Wolf and I really enjoyed this one, so I'm hoping to really enjoy The Foxglove King as well. And since it's nice out today, I'm thinking of going to read outside for a bit at this gazebo near my apartment. So I'm going to go start this, and I'll be back in a little bit with my first thoughts. Hi, so I'm back and I've read about 50 pages of The Foxglove King, and I'm finding this very interesting so far. Our story follows 23-year-old Lore, and Lore has a secret. Her secret is that she can use death magic, so she can bring people back to life. And at the very beginning of the book, she gets stuck in a certain situation and she has to use this death magic, and this ends up getting her in trouble because no one is supposed to use death magic. The only people who are allowed to use death magic are these warrior monks, and they're the ones who end up finding her after she uses this magic. And she's pretty much giving two options. She can either go work in the mines, which is pretty much a death sentence, or she can use her death magic to help them try to figure out why whole villages are just suddenly dying out overnight. So that's about where I'm at in the story so far. And like I said before, I'm finding it very interesting. I really like Laura's character, and I'm interested to know more about her and her past and what this underground world was that she came from. And also the magic system so far, it's a little confusing, but I'm sure once we get more into it, it'll become clearer, but I'm still finding it very fascinating so far. And also there's been another character introduced so far who might be a potential love interest, and his name is Gabriel, and he has an eye patch, and he's also one of the warrior monks. So I'm intrigued by his character, and I hope we get to learn more about him too. So those are all my thoughts for now. I am now going to take a break for lunch, and then after lunch I am going to actually switch to this book on audiobook so I can listen to it and start doing a puzzle. Hi, so I am back with a reading update. I am almost done with The Foxglove King. I have less than 50 pages left, and I just want to give some of my thoughts before I finish this up. So this book is very much a slow burn. The beginning is really character and world focused, and it takes its time in the beginning developing the characters and exploring their life at court. For me, the characters have been my favorite part of this book so far. There are 3 characters that steal the show for me, and they are Lore, our main female character, and then there are our 2 main male characters, Gabriel, Gabe, and Bastian, who is the king's heir. So Gabe, I mentioned earlier, is one of the warrior monks, but he is also a member of the nobility. And he and Lore are paired together for a task given to them by the king. And to perform their task, Lore pretends to be his cousin who is being introduced to the court, and Gabriel is supposed to be there as a sort of guide and chaperone. So I just love Gabe's character. He has that tortured soul thing going on that is a weakness of mine, and he also falls into the grumpy character trope. And he had some tragic things happen to him in the past, so that's the reason that his eye is missing and he wears an eye patch. And just the slowly building relationship between him and Lore in the book just already has my heart. And then our other male lead, Bastian, can be seen as Gabe's opposite because he is very much social, more outgoing, and more sunshiny. And my first impression of Bastian was that he reminded me a lot of Jax from Caraval or the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. And the task that Lore was given by the king was to get close to Bastian because the king believes that Bastian is conspiring with an enemy nation. However, it's quickly revealed that while Bastian may put on a public persona of being a party boy, he really is not, and that he is very cunning and smart and knows a lot about what is going on. Seeing Lore, Bastian, and Gabe all interact has been a highlight of this book for me because their dynamic is very fascinating. Because you have Gabe, who resents Sebastian for specific reasons, and he doesn't really get along with Bastian. And then you have Bastian, who just likes to tease Gabe. And then the 2 of them are both drawn to Lore, and then Lore feels that she has a connection to them, like that she knows them from somewhere else. So it's been very interesting, like reading and trying to figure out what the connection between the 3 of them is. Around the 250 page mark in this book, something happened that really propelled the plot forward, and now the plot has been like moving along rather briskly ever since then. And now, super close to the end, everything has kind of started coming towards a climax. So I'm super excited to see what's going to happen. So I am going to finish this up, and then I'll be back with my final thoughts. So I'm back with my final thoughts. So I ended up really enjoying this book, and I think I might have enjoyed it even more than For the Wolf. And this book had a really good mix of dark fantasy, romance, political intrigue, and mystery, and none of like the elements overpowered the other. It was all balanced really well, and I think that helped keep my attention through the entirety of this book, and I never once got bored while reading this. So I mentioned earlier that the magic system was a little confusing in the beginning, but I felt that by the end of the book that I understood it pretty well, and I thought the book did a good job explaining the magic system, which revolves around life and death magic over the course of the novel. The ending was full of shocking revelations that kept me flipping the pages, and there were also some unanswered things still by the end of the book, but I was expecting that because this is only book 1 of a series. And I still say that my favorite thing about this book was the characters. Lore, Gabe and Bastion all have my heart already, and I will be rooting for them even though the odds seem to be very much against them. And I just really can't wait to read book 2, The Hemlock Queen, when it comes out next February, so I can continue this journey with Laura, Gabe, and Bastion. Hi, so I am back with an update. It's been about 2 weeks since my last update, and today is June 13th. And in that time, I started and finished Fourth Wing. But before I give my thoughts on this, I do have some book mail, so I'm going to do a little unboxing. So I have a book in the box, and then these other 4 are Bookish t-shirts I bought off of Etsy. So that was my little unboxing, and I also just realized after filming that my microphone wasn't plugged in, so it might be hard to hear anything I was saying during that clip. So just a real recap, so 2 of the shirts I bought were fall themed and Halloween themed, and spooky season's my favorite time of year, so I'm really happy to have those 2. And then the one with the fox on it is from one of my favorite book series, Once Upon a Broken Heart, so I was super excited to have that one. And then the other one is just like a really cute Bookish t-shirt. And again, I will include the links for all of those, the Etsy accounts, down in the description down below in case you're interested in buying any of them. And then the book, Happy Place, I'm super excited to read because Emily Hendry's Beach Read is one of my favorite contemporary romances. And I also read Book Lovers last year, and while I didn't love that one quite as much as Beach Read, I still really enjoyed it, so I am super excited to get into this one, which I plan to read this one in a 24-hour reading vlog where I just read contemporary romance. So if you're interested in a video like that, be on the lookout. So now let's talk about my thoughts on Fourth Wing. So I know right now this book is super popular and that it's like everywhere on like BookTube and Bookstagram, but I actually learned about it a couple months before it came out. Just Amazon just randomly recommended it to me one day, and that was like before I had heard anything about it at all. And the first thing that caught my attention was the cover and also these edges. So I was like, ooh, pretty book. So then I read the description on the back and found out it was about dragons and dragon riders and going to like a school to train to become one. And I was like, ooh, yes, that sounds like something I want to read. And then like closer to the release date, I heard some booktubers talking about it, and then it came out and it exploded in popularity everywhere. I also finally pre-ordered it when Barnes & Noble had their pre-order sale, which was about a week before this came out. So I avoided any videos and reviews about this so I wouldn't spoil myself. And then like I tried to like keep my expectations normal and not let them get too high because of all the hype, because sometimes if I let myself get too hyped up about a book, then I might get disappointing. But after reading this, I am happy to say that personally for me, this lived up to the hype, and I can see why so many people like it. And I just really enjoyed it. It was just like a fun ride, like a wild ride from start to finish. So before I go more into my thoughts, I'm just gonna tell a little bit about the story. So the book takes place in a world where there are dragons and dragon riders. And in order to become a dragon rider, 20-year-olds attend this war college for 3 years. And at this college, they go through deadly trials and tests to try to become a dragon rider. And the success rate for becoming a dragon rider is very, very low. And many die trying. And this book really does not sugarcoat the harshness of this world at all. Right from the very beginning of the book, you see just how harsh this world is. As the first thing the new students have to do is they have to cross this super high parapet, which if you fall and slip off of this, you're falling to your death. There's no coming back from that. And then even if you do make it across this parapet and join a squad, you are still far from safe because there are many obstacles in the way to you becoming a dragon rider. One of them being, if a dragon doesn't like you, it'll just incinerate you with its flames. So it quickly becomes clear in this book that no one is safe. And right away I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to become attached to someone and then they're going to die. And then I am just going to be in pain. So yeah, and that way, like the harshness of the world and the way the book doesn't sugarcoat it reminded me like very much of the Hunger Games. And speaking of the Hunger Games, our main character Violet reminds me a little bit of Katniss, as she is also a bit of an underdog and is at a clear disadvantage in the beginning. So Violet was never planning to be a dragon rider. She wanted to be a scribe. So that's what she trained for her entire life, to be a scribe. But then 6 months before she had to take the test to be a scribe, her mother was like, nope, you're becoming a dragon rider, suck it up. And she couldn't defy her mother because her mother is actually a powerful and well-respected leader of the dragon riders. So Violet only had 6 months to train for the dragon riders, whereas others had been training their entire lives. And she's also at a disadvantage because her body is physically weak. So she's a lot weaker than like a normal person. So now Violet has to do her best to try to overcome all the odds that are against her and somehow survive her dragon rider training. And this is much easier said than done because she doesn't only have the trials to worry about, but she also has to worry about other students who kind of want her dead, including a third-year student who has a grudge against her because her mother was responsible for the execution of his father because his father led a rebellion. So that's just the gist of the plot, and now for my thoughts. Unlike The Foxglove King, this book was definitely not a slow burn. Right from the beginning, things happened and kept happening, and I didn't want to put this book down. And this book was just a pure adrenaline rush, like all the way through, especially the first 200 pages. This whole book was like riding a roller coaster. At one point, I was reading this book in the morning, and it actually woke me up more than my tea did because that's how exciting it was. And I just kept flipping pages because I needed to know what happened next. Like, I needed to know how Violet would overcome the next challenge, which dragon would choose her, what would her special power be. I just needed to know all those things. Speaking of Violet, I enjoyed her as a character and liked seeing her grow. She goes from not having confidence and feeling out of place among the dragon riders to really gaining confidence in herself and feeling at home in the riders quadrant. And her journey getting there is full of struggles that kept my eyes glued to the pages and also made me cheer for her. I liked seeing the friendships form between her and her squad, and this book made me attached to side characters, which makes me nervous because I just know that some of them are probably gonna die later on. Speaking of character relationships, there is a slow burn romance in this between Violet and another character, and it gives enemies to lovers vibes, but the relationship is Violet ends up falling for this character that she should not be attracted to, because essentially he should be her enemy because her mother was the one that was responsible for his father's death, and she thinks that he wants to kill her. And I thought their relationship was done well, and it was definitely one of the highlights of the book for me. And I just loved all the angsty scenes between them where they kind of want to kill each other, but also they're undeniably attracted to each other. And there's fun banner, and there's also some spicy scenes as well. And then the relationships with their dragons actually complicates their relationship even more, and it makes their whole dynamic even more fun to read about. Speaking of the dragons in this book are the fierce warrior types, and you better be strong enough to handle them, because if you are not, they have no qualms about incinerating you with their breath or letting you fall off their backs because you're not strong enough to stay on. The dragon and dragon rider relationship in this book remind me a bit of Aragon, because the dragons share their power with their riders and they can communicate with each other in their minds. However, unlike Aragon, each rider develops a unique power that could be anything from elemental control to a power that's related to the mind. So the plot in this book was very focused on Violet making her way through the school year with training and learning how to become a dragon rider, but it also very much felt like she was playing a death game, almost like she was in the Hunger Games, because she was constantly facing these trials that could result in her dying. And just even like sparring and training with others could result in her death. And like there's this one kid who was like hell-bent on killing her, so that's particularly scary. So the plot itself was a little bit predictable at times, but I feel like in this book it was the journey, one that was exciting and heart-pounding, that really made the book for me. And then, of course, the book ending on a shocking revelation, and now I need to read the next one, like, right now. But fortunately, the next book is coming out in November, so I don't have to wait too long to find out what happens next. Overall, though, I think if you enjoyed The Hunger Games or Divergent, then I would definitely check this one out. Hi, I'm back with an update. So I have finished Under Darkened Skies and I enjoyed this one very much. Unlike Fourth Wing, it is very much a slow burn in terms of plot and story. Like the Foxglove King, it takes its time developing the world and characters. And it takes place in a world where there's elemental magic, and our main character, 24-year-old Astrea Sovna, is a Lightbringer, which means not only can she use light magic, but she can also heal and read the emotions of others. And the fact that she is a Lightbringer is something that she keeps a secret from almost everyone. And that is because as a Lightbringer, she is supposed to join the military. However, her uncle foresaw her dying if she joined the military. So that is why only her uncle, her best friend Cress, and her family know about her Lightbringer powers. And she even has to keep this a secret from her other best friend, Princess Eliana. So Astrea goes about her days keeping this secret and doing her work as a librarian and spending time with her friends. However, one day her world is turned upside down where the king assigns her to a research project, and she is supposed to work on this research project with Prince Varajin, also known as Jin to his friends. And once upon a time, him and Astrea were best friends, but they haven't seen each other in 8 years and she doesn't want to see him. So the first 190-ish pages of the book spend time establishing the world and getting to know Astrea and the other characters around her. And you get to meet her best friends, Cress and Princess Eliana. And I just loved seeing the bond between them, and their friendship was so heartwarming. And overall, I thought all the characters, both minor and major, were well developed in this book. And all the characters just felt very real and relatable. My favorite character was definitely Jin, and he's just like a nice guy character, but he's also one of those characters where you don't want to mess with what he cares about. And I just love seeing the interactions between him and Astrea because it's clear that he deeply cares for her and that they both understand each other so well. And the two of them are just so precious together, and I love seeing the slow burn romance between them, and the banter between the two of them was also great. And they very much have a friends to lovers relationship going on, with a wrench being thrown into their relationship because they had been estranged for 8 years. And while their relationship was one of my favorite parts of the book, the plot was also intriguing. The plot really takes off around the 190-page mark when something big happens. And when this thing happened, I was completely enthralled by this book. I didn't want to put it down. I needed to keep reading to find out what was going to happen and what was going on. And then from there, the plot continues to move along steadily. And we also get more of Jin and Astrea spending time together, where they have a lot of cute and heart-melting moments. Overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I am looking forward to reading the second book, Into Whispering Shadows, when it comes out in September, because I need more of Jin and Astrea, and I also need to know some answers to some questions I have about the plot and things going on. Also, there is a novella about Jin and what he went through during the 8 years that he and Astrea were separated, which I'm also intrigued and interested in reading, and that is coming out soon on June 28th. Oh, also, I wanted to mention that in the B-roll, I made some crescent rolls that were filled with a cinnamon filling, and that was actually inspired by Under Darkened Skies, because in the book, one of Astrea's favorite foods is the cinnamon pancakes that she gets from a certain restaurant. And she describes them as being like flaky and filled with a cinnamon filling, and that just really made me want something with a warm cinnamon filling, so I made the crescent rolls. Also, they're a super easy dessert to make, so I recommend them if you're craving something that tastes similar to cinnamon rolls. So that is about the end of this video. So just to wrap up quickly what I read. So the first thing I read was The Foxglove King, and I would definitely recommend this if you like dark fantasy stories and slow burn romance. And then the second book I read was Fourth Wing, and I would recommend this one if you like fast-paced stories, enemies to lovers, and cute and grumpy dragons. And then the final book was Under Darkened Skies, and this one I recommend if you like fantasy stories with elemental magic and slow burn romance. So let me know down below if you have read any of those books and what you thought of them, or if you plan on reading any of them in the future. Thank you for watching. Bye!